sorry, I just started to say something.
Oh, no, I mean, a little, it's fine. I was just like, we just introduced a second ago, so it's like, came in on the tempo, use that. So, okay, announcements though. So we have new officers, thankfully, much needed at that. Let's see here, we just decided that based on mostly just the people who applied to the forum, etc. So Peter Manager Troy and government liaison Dion here, non-profit liaison Robert Hill, and that regular accent. There it is. Actually, this planter Miranda and documentary scribe, mostly kind of sharing the role of storyteller with Joseph here. So I did Alex. Great. Let's see. Alright, moving on though. Just wanted to share some like prototyping stuff because I think that's one of the big things forward that we want to work on is basically having a way of like easily doing projects. So a couple things to address that. The first one is prototyping. So you're going to pull this up. This is called Just in Mind. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that or ever had to work with that before, but it's basically good for just UI prototyping purposes. Load. In the meantime, the other one is waffle.io. This one's great too. And the only problem with Waffle is that it works like directly through the GitHub, so it's great for code projects. It's basically like Trello for GitHub. And just to show an example of that, like if we wanted to take any project directly out to GitHub and just pick one roof, and because that one we're really starting from the ground up with just like API decisions, etc. So we can take any project and basically make a Trello that needs to be up with that. And the other one, just Trello, though, maybe kind of that, in case anybody hasn't ever used Trello before. Same thing, but more open-ended. So you can make any like non-code projects with this. Say like an open data project or any sort of graphics project. Let's see. Well, actually, I haven't really created very much of this yet, but yeah. So same thing, same exact thing almost. But this one code projects, this one not code projects. Anyway, and moving forward when we're breaking off the small groups and working on projects, it's just a matter of playing it by ear and like joining into these as they happen, and we'll make it clear which ones on Trello, which ones on Wall, etc. So anyway, slideshow. Yeah, a lot of representative code from America at our next meeting. Preston Rita, and I can't stress how much like this guy has been hugely helpful on us kind of getting the brigade. Getting code for Birmingham like sheet. Really helpful guy, nice guy. I think he actually came out of Georgia Tech. I think he actually really podcast, but anyway. Nonetheless, it's gonna get some of us, like myself and some of the officers, to kind of like maybe get lunch with him or something, where he shows up. But anyway, and as for meetings, another thing I wanted to talk about tonight that I'd like to go ahead and sort of lay the framework for future meetings is especially like these like open forum like planning meetings and those sort. I kind of start incorporating shadow councils, which seems to be a standard on the other brigades. So the rules are essentially as they are here, just anyone who attends the meeting is free to use the information discussed, but basically in any sort of public discussion, don't refer to the identity or political affiliation, etc. of that person. So, what happens at meetings doesn't stay at meetings, but identities and affiliations do. So it's like somebody's talking about this at the meeting. But yeah, I mean that's just a good like standard ground rule, like lay now. Better now than later. anyway, so for and to add to that though, and to add to the idea of like really developing our projects from henceforth, um, I was thinking, what we'll start doing since we have 2 meetings a month typically. The first meeting of the month will be sort of take on more like a hack night thing, so we'll have some short discussion, short announcements, and we'll follow that up with like splitting up and working on projects, and maybe to motivate more people to come in and stuff, we might even like cater those. We have a little bit of a budget for that. That would be kind of cool. And then, the second meeting of the month being more of the open forum type thing where we try to bring in people and discuss ideas, etc. So I guess I just planned it that way because it's kind of landed us a bit, this being the second meeting of the month. The best way for us to like quickly like move forward and start really like knocking projects out next month or starting next month. So let's see. Oh yeah, one more thing. I talked with Bloom. It's like this design initiative at UAB headed by the graphic design professor there, and basically they're right up our alley. The kind of stuff they do. It's just like a design work catered towards civic engagement and towards like nonprofits and such. Like, I think they're already working on a project right now in Birmingham with like I think like just mapping out like parks or something like that. And anyway, so I think that we have a lot of potential to work with them. Maybe like budget dollars and that is just something we're working on right now. And Mark will have a little bit one as well when it comes to that. But actually, I had the opportunity to work directly with them too. So like as much as I can, like pull them aside and go and like come work on projects with us and try to do that. So we'll have more designers for sure. And to add to that, I think Brayden and Harry work closer to the ACM and the CS department and coders. So and there's just the social capital to make this happen. It's all there. It's all in place. And the strategy is to like really get work done in the future is a couple of things like changing those meetings. So we have that first meeting along hack nights, and the other strategy using these like different prototyping tools, which I'll definitely go make a talk about on the forum, just to like keep everybody on the same page about that and how we'll utilize the 3 of these. But we do have a license for just for a year to use for free, which is cool because it's really nice. Speaking of which, it's loaded now. Probably loaded a while ago, but I'll show that off for a second, like what it does. Okay. So I just I wanted to create a interface for iPhone now, right? So but you can also do like web apps, as you saw there. This is just a great way to just get the ground running with, like making them mock-up, rather. If and when it will load, probably battery issues actually. Okay, there it is. So, as you can see, if anybody's worked with Photoshop or Illustrator or something like that, it's really intuitive kind of like that. So, make sure it's like rectangles, etc. For an interface, just come in here. I actually started playing with this afternoon, as a matter of fact. So, I would just say if you want to work with us, we do have a license and you can download it and start playing with it. But a very intuitive, fast way to like build something up and get from point A to point B really quickly. But without further ado, that's kind of my day announcements. Like I said, not a whole lot to talk about this week, but I'll pass it over. I'll try to go suits.
The juniors.
Okay.
Nope. Don't want to run Windows.
It's a great some background music.
I need what? Yeah, I think so. Set up? Ready? Nope. Said ready to share.
Well, while this is loading, can I ask a question? Sure. This is just something that jumps out at me in regards to working with UAV and collaborating with those entities that are in place at UAV. I've had several friends who got the engineering department there, and essentially, as a student at UAV, if you create something, UAV owns that. And so this group sort of links up with UAV and maybe is using UAV resources, et cetera. Is there any concern? Has there been any thought given to who's actually going to own what's?
Well, I guess from my experience, I've rolled as directly if you're like working on their campus on something, for one, for two, if we're like directly working with the organization there, so it'd be like outsource CS students to come work with us or cooperate with them on a project. I don't know, that might be an interesting question if we're like doing hack ranks or something like that there. But in terms of like bringing people just to like come show up.
Oh, no, yeah, I don't think there's any issue. You're just bringing them over here, and it's just something to be aware of. Affiliate yourself with UAV.
Yeah.
Very quickly, UAV can help you. So I just.
Yeah, we've run into that or like had discussions of that before on other things. You know,
It's not just UAV. So many companies do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's typically only if that falls in line with a project you're working on for that organization.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, a good friend in master's thesis was stolen by the research lab he was working for. So, you know, it happens everywhere, but yeah, I mean, it's
yeah, it's definitely something to take into consideration. It's a big red line, I guess. Moving forward.
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick little transit update. Last time we had discussed it looking at some maps. I have made some various types of maps. Since then, I've gone ahead and I've posted that code on GitHub with some instructions on how to run it and all the SVGs for it. That was just kind of a sample idea I had, so I'd like to see, it'd be great to see some other people kind of taking that, playing with it and seeing what ideas they have. Also, if anybody's on the mailing list, a friend from Atlanta who works for MARTA has joined up and is really interested in Birmingham's transit system and knows a lot about transit in general and designing maps. So he's very interested in helping us out with that project. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're kind of on the mailing list and keeping up with that. But I want to talk about something just completely unrelated to maps, but still related to transit. If you've ridden the bus system from Central Station, almost all the buses that you take, the first thing that it does is it goes down 18th Street, and then most of them go up to like 5th Avenue North, and then go over to 22nd, and then come back down to 1st, and then back down to 20th, and go on their way. So they do this loop around downtown. Okay, and this has kind of always been one of those things on why do we need this loop. And I know Ann August and BJCTA have talked about, you know, why does this bus system still have this loop? So I was like, I'm just going to play with it and see like how much time is wasted. So I just sort of played with some numbers, and you know, none of this is official. I just kind of looked at various times and distance and what routes run on it. And so I found there's really four large loops, 4 variations of this loop that happen. There's some smaller ones, but I'll talk about the main 4. So here's the one that I just described. Here's Central Station. And what happens with these buses is they're actually all going to head south on 20th Street towards 5 Points. But the first thing they do is they go north into downtown, and they do this big loop before coming down. So this loop is 1.3 miles, and it takes about 9 minutes to do the whole loop. So if our proposal would be, well, let's just go straight up Morris, like the 280 and the 31 do, and then hit 20th and go south on 20th. So what happens if we skip this loop? So it saves us about, 1.1 miles and 7 minutes on every trip. So if we look at the routes that are on this loop, the main three are the 12, the 14, and the 42. And so here's the number of trips that each of those routes has per day, whether it's a weekday or a weekend, because we have different schedules on Saturday. So if we take a look at that, and we can just do some very simple calculations based on mileage and time, and we can see that, you know, every day, every weekday between these three routes, we're running the buses an extra 54 miles, approximately 5 hours and 43 minutes. And just on Saturday, it's an extra 23 miles and 2 hours and 27 minutes. So if we look at this over a full week, you know, in a week's span, we're running 293 extra miles. So there's a document, the NTD, which has a lot of information submitted by BJCTA, and in that they have their operating cost per mile and per hour. I chose to do the per mile calculation. It was a little more conservative and a little, I think a little more exact here because I knew the mileage difference. I was sort of guessing at the time difference in some of these. But just removing this one loop from these three routes, I mean, based on that calculation of $8.20 a mile for operating cost, it's almost $125,000 a year. Right there.
Is there any information on what kind of stops are along the way that are covered?
Whether they have shelters. So we have all that stop information. It's all in the GTFS data. So we could go back and we could look at how many stops we skip.
I know that putting down covered stops costs somewhere around $10,000.
Yeah, and there's a lot of regulation and bureaucracy around it too. Now, what I kind of want to bring up for discussion, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves after this, is how this loop has to be there. So how do we replace it? So let's talk about that and how we'd still hit all these stops, because people still need to move around in those areas. So a second loop is pretty similar. This one's actually a little bit shorter. Instead of going all the way up to 5th North, it only goes up to 3rd North, and then comes around the same way and goes south on 20th. And so the main routes, again, so we say 0.8 miles and 4 minutes. So a little bit less, but still a bit of time. And this has, again, three routes, 17, 44, and 39. And again, here's just those numbers. And, you know, there's 90,000 a year based on that operating cost. So I just found this very interesting. See if I can get to my, there it is, okay. And then this one's actually very interesting. This is the third loop, and the routes that run on this are the 8, the 50s, and the 51. If anybody knows the 50s and the 51s, they're pretty insignificant routes since they actually only run once per day on the weekdays. So really this is only looking at this one route, the number 8, which has 25 trips on a weekday. This one leaves Central Station at 18th Street and Morris, north to 5th, all the way over to 22nd, down to 1st, all the way back to 18th, passes back by Central Station, and then heads south down 18th. Right? So you could literally pull out at Central Station and turn right and go south down 18th Street. So this is an extra 1.5 miles and 11 minutes on every single trip. So again, here we can see, you know, about a little over $100,000 based on that operating cost per year. And then the very last one is another similar one, but it only goes up to 3rd and then back to 18th. And the main route on this one is the 48, and it's a little under 50,000. So if we look at all those and just kind of add those 4 loops up in those routes, oops, isn't even very nicely there. All right. So anyway, that's you know, $365,000 a year. So what would we do with that? You know, I mean, these are some proposals that we could make. There's a lot of talk about redoing the DART circulator system right now. So this money could be used to fund a better circulator, a circulator that, you know, actually circulated every, you know, 5 to 10 minutes, and could provide a similar route. And what that would do is it would move people around downtown, like a circulator would, and it would also get people to Central Station to then catch their bus to go outside of downtown. So I just thought this was very interesting, just playing with some of these numbers and seeing what we could do with it. So that was my Sunday morning on what I was playing with. I just found it interesting. So, any questions?
Are there any proposed costs on the DART circulator revamp? I know there was talk about it
Well, there's
months and months ago.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's any. They've been doing all of those
Studies.
studies.
They've done a lot of studies.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my brain no working right now. Like 1 hour of sleep. They had those public involvement meetings, and I don't know that they have an actual plan yet. So it's hard to have a number when you don't have the actual okay, this is what we're going to do. Therefore, it costs this much. So I don't. They can probably give estimates, but I don't think we have any hard numbers on exact. We don't have a design for the system. We don't know how many buses we're going to need, frequency, times.
Yeah, there was public involvement on what the public wanted, and then they had hired a consulting company to kind of look at population and where people were moving. But I don't know if they've published any results of that yet.
I think it's early. Well, based on my conversations with Adam Schneider, he's on the board, and he has been pushing having counter-rotating loops, so 14th, 18th, 20th, and 24th, I think, so that you are never more than 2 blocks away from.
That was that whole discussion at that.
Yeah.
What June that was.
Yeah. So if they go with that, that's super simple and very effective because it's true. There's literally never more than 2 blocks.
And then this whole loop system, is completely unnecessary. Just because you get when all these darts take you to Central Station, so then you just take a bus to it.
We have population dense maps yet? Or could we get access to those?
Does anybody know if we could find a good population, like an up-to-date population density, since it's changing a lot?
Check back on that shadow set and see if it's like a big.
Because if we could get population density maps, we could do something like, I played around a bit with heatmap.js, generate some population density maps, if you can give me some numbers. And then we can use that other tool we showed about 3 weeks ago, where now that we have numbers for things, to let people play with routes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but we gotta remember that the problem that we're trying to solve is NPR is basically attracting salesmen. So you gotta take that into consideration.
I'm sure we can ask Ms. August to release that for the study, or at least parts of it.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what stage they're at right now.
Yeah, I didn't complete the study, and I was told that it was going to be on their website pretty soon. Maybe a month or 2. So I'll call her tomorrow and ask.
Awesome. That'd be great.
What needs to be done to get that? Was it transit mix? Was that
Transit mix.
yeah.
So for those who weren't here last week, I'll just bring this up really quickly. This is another project that we've talked about. This was another brigade, Code for America Brigade, came up with this from San Francisco. But the idea behind it is it lets you kind of design your ideal transit system for your city. So here's Birmingham, and I could just add a transit line, and I could say I want it to come here from, Lynn Park and come straight down into, I don't know, just 5 points, and it just goes up and down and back. Right? And so then I can say, how frequent do I want it, what times, and it estimates, pretty roughly what some of these costs would be for that line. So our thinking was, it wasn't so oriented around the cost, what we thought we'd do is kind of do like a crowdsourcing of people in Birmingham on where do people want the routes.
We can even turn it into a game, almost.
Yeah.
There is a large market for people who play like city builders or stuff like that. And if we got enough data, we can have a city building game where you design a transit route system, and and we've seen in the past how people doing gamification has came up with astonishing results, such as small circuit boards that from the work that was done over at MIT, and figuring out certain genomes from the work they're doing over in I can't think of the name of college, but gamification does work.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I hear this from a lot of people. You know, they're like, oh well, I ride the buses if, right? And so what is that if? You know, is that a bus that leaves from your house and goes directly to your business right at the time you want to leave in the morning? Or is, you know, realistically, what is that? So the idea here is kind of, you know, let people create their, you know, 2 or 3 bus routes that if they existed with the right times, they'd consider using it. Take all this data from all these different people, combine it together, and start looking at, you know, where are the places that we need routes that they don't exist right now.
So what's the first step? Because it's open source, right?
It's open source. It's on GitHub. So I think what we want to do is we just, you know, we want to clone that, and then we want to modify it, obviously, so that it's really just focused on Birmingham and all the different maps people are creating and how to combine those together.
So dump those routes onto a server somewhere else, so we can access it. Yeah. So I just think that would be, you know, from my perspective, I think I can really get people.
Yeah.
Like doing this.
Yeah.
You know.
I think people would do it just, I mean, it's kind of fun to draw a little route, right?
Yeah. And yeah, they can do it from their house, their place of work, or wherever. But
And if you like post something like Hacker News or art programming or whatever, I've seen things on there where I'm just like, oh, I could totally waste 5 minutes on this, and I'll play with it. Well, I may not ever look at it again, but in those 5 minutes, someone could have struck pure genius.
So I don't really know, you know, if we got the citizens of Birmingham to do this, I don't really know what the results would mean, you know, or how we'd be able to communicate that to BJCTA or what they think of it. But I think it'd be very interesting internally for us to do and kind of talk about it. Where I think it could be helpful is I'd like to see people outside of the city of Birmingham and in some of the suburbs participating in it. Right. So a big problem, you know, that we have is funding and trying to get all the different municipalities inside of Metro Birmingham to support transit. And a lot of them are really not willing. And so I know BJCTA is always in talks with these different municipalities to get funding. And if we could say, like, look, this suburb had, you know, 15,000 people that drew routes like this, like, you know, there's some interest there. You guys should consider funding and helping us expand to this area. So it might be a tool that they could use to kind of bring up some leverage.
There's a general incentive also, like not just showing that there are folks who want that kind of access, but that makes sense for them as a community because the one bus is a lot less wear and tear than all the folks' cars that would be taking place of said bus. Not to mention enhancing their community from the standpoint of the bus is going to be far more efficient and it takes all those cars off the road, so the congestion in that area goes down quite a bit, which means that those areas are going to be more desirable. It's like, hey, now suddenly there's less traffic, right? People there. So
that's an educational thing. That's an educational message. That's hard to get out to the people.
Yeah.
So, but I think with that, I think it would be good to kind of just open it up, and if anybody, you know, we've talked about some other projects in the past, things that we're working on, but if anybody else has some projects that they're interested on or working on that they want to share, that would be kind of a great time to open this up and discuss it. So,
I'm currently working on 2 projects. Um, one we've talked about uh, the food truck tracker. I got the basics of that working, so I have a map. I can pull your GPS down. And I can, and next step will be going ahead, finding some basic server and, then my bottleneck is, I'm a college student, I am broke, I can't afford GPSs, and I do not know how I would convince food trucks to put GPS on their truck.
One thing I forgot earlier, actually, unmanned infographics, I should have the food desert infographic for this month done in a couple of days. And just proposing for the next one, though, I was thinking between a couple of different topics. We could discuss maybe transit or open data or something. Maybe, but I would say like that's what I did this month. Like Brad showed some interest in like pitching in on the food desert particularly, and
we have community development, we have random year, and I know IBM has proposed that proposal. So yeah, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, many of y'all probably know about the IBM engagement we had back in July when they came actually study the food desert issue here in the city for 3 weeks, and we have not yet received their final report with a series of recommendations. But as soon as it comes out, we'll be sure to pass that along to you, to let y'all start disseminating and digesting what they put together.
okay, cool. I might even hold off on that for a bit as they come out, and we should do.
We expected, they told us it would be about 4 weeks or so before we saw it. We're kind of in 4 to 6 weeks. We're in that 4-week range right now. So we should be seeing the president.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a good thing to consideration, right?
Yeah, so I guess what would help, is for building these relationships with, government organizations, is kind of understanding how we can be helping what you guys are doing, what your mission is, how we give assistance to that. We don't want to be, both doing the same thing and going against each other. How can we work together? How can we support?
What we did last week is we invited Tate, and he came over to our department, and we had some of the other departments like municipal court, community development. They came over, we just had introduction. That's the reason why I invited them to come here, so that they get to see all the people that are part of this, and then we can come up with more ideas, and they can have some of their needs for their departments, and that we can bring forth for more projects going forward.
Is there any particular project that you're working on now that we could work on or help with or contribute to?
Not all at once. I think I meant to tell you about this last week. We're currently working with Fishery. You all may know it's a GIS company that does geographically based database information. And we're working with them to develop an application that will allow our inspectors to do housing inspection reports for people. Via how really enter this data that's synced in with our local servers. I think at this point we're still alpha testing that to get that out for our inspectors to use. But eventually send something like that, how we can tie into that through I think it was Civic Insight that was done in New Orleans. At the time it was called Light Status, about how we can start pushing that information back out to citizens. What Civic Insight does is essentially lets a citizen query a parcel and see whatever sort of record is attached to that parcel. I know we, as a city, have to go a long way still to get some of that data out available, but we're starting to make steps in that right direction. So that's something that's in the back of our mind for the future.
So like housing inspection or building inspection records.
This is how we, community development we deal with housing. Right. This is not the other inspectors like new construction road or anything like that. This is just strictly with existing housing stock in the city that our inspectors will work on this application.
Okay. So by package, you mean something on a map? Really get the most recent inspection records on.
Yeah, it's just trying to get into a platform where we can actually look at it and kind of start to see spatially where we're having more of a particular type of code violation in, say, these neighborhoods of this side of town versus the other side.
And all that stuff's gonna, you ever don't want to make it like publicly available?
I think eventually we will.
So, I'm a bit unfamiliar with the terminology. What exactly is a package? Like, in the way that you're talking about it, I'm not, it's not package parcel.
A parcel is it's a geography of land. So if you own a home or own property, it's essentially a parcel. And that's recorded in the tax assessor's office. Either your name or if you have a mortgage on the bank's name or something like that, where it's a physical place.
Okay.
I'm curious on one of the major complaints that I hear a lot about related to business licenses and also procurement. And I was wondering if there have been conversations about how that can be streamlined as well.
I'm still going through the whole business license thing. It takes me. And the website is antiquated. They have all the documentation you want online, but it takes literally, I'm still waiting on my LLC license for my company.
So you love it, is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
You love it.
No. Yeah, that could be something. I just don't know what you can do with that because it's not the technology in which is lacking. It's there in doing things.
And you all speak for that?
Yeah. Basically, tax and revenue license system. So we don't have any representative on that, and I don't know much more.
That's it.
I'm relatively new to Birmingham. I'm still saying that. I've been here 5 years. I'm just dealing with the city systems now the last 9 months. And my question is, I'm a couple of meetings under elsewhere outside of the U.S. Why is there something in your internal processes within the city or the state that makes things take longer? Because I find a lot of processes at city and state level take a lot longer than our team.
Majority of the public sector is the processes that's involved in terms of getting approvals, going through the different departments and going through the committee meetings, getting approvals. That's what it actually is more time consuming rather than people wanting to do the things. Even though if you have the staff ready to do the things, it takes some time to go through these channels and getting those approvals process. Because everything has to be documented. Again, I just don't want to watch on that, but there are certain things like new systems that we bring forth that bring in more efficiencies and actually speed up this process.
Right. So I guess what I'm wondering is identified then how much of this is something that Nancy is a process thing that should be looked at before we get the software.
Basically, for anything, you can buy the best of the big software systems, but you don't have a clearly identified workflow process in place, it's really not going to do much better. So that's what now we're in the process of re-engineering most of these departments in terms of how we come up with best practices methodology for coming up streamlining workflow process. For example, speaking of municipal courts, they are implementing a new case management system that we're doing, and we're hanging out with an enterprise-wide imaging system with them. So those kind of things, you're kind of having a centralized database where you have case management information, plus you document everything is scanned in one central database. Then you can extract information much more easily. So yes, a lot of things needs to be done, but we're taking one step at a time.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, like in terms of like business licenses or whatever, that's one of the fuzzier data sets in terms of like machine readable, like freely available online. So like we have discussed like creating this sort of like a data warehouse for these sort of projects moving forward, and like really trying to push and advocate for that. And to comment on that further, I think in fact the next sort of hack night we're going to be doing like first, since we're going to be doing these the second Wednesday of each month, first meeting of each month for us, really splitting out and emphasizing the fact that you don't have to be a coder to get involved with some of these projects, like one of them being us creating a social data policy, bringing in people and like shipping out pieces of this and tracking something and bolting it together so we can bring in something sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the typical figure, speaking of business license, and just we touched on real property, and again, one thing you always have to keep in mind is Jefferson County in the not so distant past went through the largest municipal bankruptcy in the history of the United States. That is a separate entity from the city. But having said that, I worked probate court for a few years, clerking for a judge, and the new technology was implemented there while I was at the court. But yet, and part of that was to get records online. But the challenge you have with legal documents is the issue that you have open data and get these things online, but yet certain portions of that, like social security numbers, for instance, have to be redacted. And the software that you have to get in place to do that is, there's issues with that, either having the amount of money to pay for the software to do it, and then even if you have software, quote unquote, doing it, depending on how sensitive this information is, there's still sort of a review process, and there's just some layers of issues that come into play. For instance, at the I just found out recently, and I'm not even sure this is public information, but their case management system, the back-end company went bankrupt. And so this is a brand new case management system that was implemented in 2011. They're actually currently shopping right now for a new case management system. And people still can barely learn how to use the latest new case management system, which replaced an ancient and antiquated MS-DOS type, unbelievably, old system. But yet, now due to this sort of outside of the control of the county circumstances, that there is no back-end support for this old case management system now. So they're having to go out and shop for a new one, which they'll newly implement, which means that none of the clerks of probate court will know how to operate that system for the next 5 years, probably. So, it's just, there's new technologies is great, but you've got to also train people to use new technology, and that's sort of a whole other side of it. The human side of the technology, but.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the back end, I wouldn't know the specifics of that. I just feel like at least for the IBM policy or what they would expect for like an open data policy to the time frame for it to be adopted per se, it's usually about like about a year, I guess, and then another year or so of like sort of perfecting that and like hardwiring it, so to speak. That's not really big, I know, but anyway, yeah, and I had to check out Google like some nice resources for that, but I mean they have pretty good way of like business licenses and making sure they're like open and as a matter of fact like streamlined on that note as well. So yeah, in terms of like the next meeting though, what I'm excited about is just like really trying to bring people in and get our hands dirty with things, and especially with this like prototyping stuff. There's projects that even involve code that you could bring in people to participate in, and they don't necessarily have to be coders, just because of essentially like using this and communicating with other people who do know how to code, per se. That tends to be like, I don't know. That's the trend among other people that use this and sort of, I guess, evangelize for it. It's helped them to do projects without coders necessarily heavily involved.
So I think what we'll do, we're kind of getting close to the end here. If you guys haven't gotten on the Google Groups mailing list, please do. We're trying to do a lot of our communication on there. It's not too noisy, so you'll just get flooded with emails or anything like that. But what I think we'll do between here and next meeting is we'll define a few of the projects that we're working on and kind of who's leading those projects. If you have one that you would like to suggest, please do it. The list is a great place to do that and start that discussion. And then for the next meeting, we'll try and kind of gather into some smaller groups and discuss some individual projects. So we'll kind of move on from there. But as I said, there's lots and lots of different things that we can work on. So if you have an idea, put it out there. It's not something you can do by yourself.
Well, I'll set in stone at least one or two projects there that I know for sure we'll probably be working on. A that open data project, try to bring people in. split off. There was suggestions from some I had turned that into something semi-legible, and then the two, I guess, something with sub T or the maps.
There's a few transit-related ones that we can work on too. And there's the. Is there any update on the One Roof project?
The One Roof, I think that's going to take some decision making on like either an API or implementing something that's been done somewhere else. But I mean, in terms of it seems pretty straightforward. It's just information. It's really enough. It's like picking up the bootstrap really. Anyway, so I don't know. We'll have that set in stone though. I think probably at least those three plus maybe something else and delegate it and get one towards that. And I guess without further ado, though, just reception. Joseph brought beverages again.
Yeah. So there's some beers in the back of the order. And, if you'd like
Let me give you
to
my
have a chat, we'll
deer in the
be
headlights
around a
look.
little bit. So thanks everybody for coming out tonight.
Yay.
We didn't sign up sheet at all today.